I got a lot of late work last term, and I was like garbage. So do your best to turn things in on time this term. For now, we're moving to phase 2 on Monday. I don't know if that will change or not. I'm hopeful that we will actually move to phase 2. You'll get to meet the other half of this class. It'll be very exciting. But who knows, right? Yes.
Do you know why we're moving to phase 2?
Because you guys all failed for term 1.
Good morning, teachers and students. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The fall musicals Your Good Man Charlie Brown and the Fantastics are showing November 2nd through the 14th. Get tickets for both at tiffutbridge.com. Come support your fellow students in these fun and exciting shows. There are no sporting events today, but for more events on their games, see the school calendar and the Instagram. Today for lunch, we'll be having bean and cheese burrito, salsa, broccoli and cauliflower, Doritos, sweet chili, spicy, and peaches, and a variety of milk.
Our 4th Provo Reads winner is Lily Wilson. Go to the library to claim your prize. Get your name in the drawing so you can win prizes too. The more you read, the better your chances are to win. Graphic novels and ebooks count too.
Seniors, are you completing your college applications? Don't forget that the admission fees are waived from several colleges and universities this week only. Save yourself some money and complete your application this week. UVU is having their virtual open house on Thursday. With a discount, their admission fee is to $10. See Mrs. Morgan at the Career Center for more information on applications.
There will be open field soccer on Mondays and Tuesdays, starting Tuesday, November 3rd until November 17th. Check outside Mr. Wheatley's room U16 for information and updates.
Boys wrestling season starts on November 9th. Any boys interested, please come talk to Coach Fawcett at L26.
Team 2 Girls Wrestling is looking for all females willing to become part of history as Utah Girls Wrestling starts its inaugural high school season this year. Please come talk to Coach Fawcett in L26 to learn more about this opportunity to be part of history.
A reminder to all interested in both boys and girls wrestling, registering an athlete needs to be completed before the first day of practice on November 9th.
As a reminder, we will be moving to phase 2 starting next Monday. Monday and Wednesday will be your odd classes, and Tuesday and Thursday will be your even classes.
Thanks, Tiffy. Have an awesome day.
Awesome day. Okay, so like I said, the reason that they're pushing to phase 2, even though we've got a lot of cases, is because these are probably the worst grades ever, and they can pass everyone like they did quarter 4, which is probably for the best because that meant basically nothing, right? But they want more teacher-student contact, so hopefully your grades stay up. Yeah, I will say, I realize that this has been challenging because it's kind of been a huge shift in that, like, you're responsible for your learning, right? Like, I don't produce learning, you guys are the ones who do that. And I think in high school, there's kind of a protected bubble there where I can help you a lot more than they will at the college level. However, like, where you guys are going through this now, you might have a leg up in college where you're used to taking on the responsibility for your own learning. And previous generations of high schoolers have been like, oh yeah, learning is just like what happens in class, but really learning is what's happening on the outside of class, right? And so, yeah, I mean, you can take it whichever way you want. You can just be bitter about it, or you can use it to, like, make yourself a better human and better student. And now I will get off my soapbox. So, today we're going to talk about satire, which is very fun. And then we're going to talk about A Modest Proposal, which you should have read. How many of you did that? All right, how many of you sort of did that? Anyone half look at it? Okay, that's great. We can maybe work with that. Tomorrow you need to have read chapters 1 through 7 of Huck Finn. The dialect is pretty heavy. Mark Twain isn't the first author to use dialect, but he's the first mainstream one to make it pretty effective. If that is challenging for you, you should look up YouTube videos of someone reading it and read along as they do it, and they can help you kind of see what he's actually saying in that dialect versus, like, I mean, when I was in high school, it really slowed me down, right? And now I'm a little bit more familiar because I've read it a bunch, right? But it can be challenging to read on your own. So read along with someone talking if that helps you, okay? And you'll see that in the video tomorrow, which will probably be your last video. Yay, you're gonna miss this moneymaker here, right? Like, I'm not gonna miss hearing my own voice. Although I don't really watch them a ton, I'm like, good luck. Okay, so on this week's module, we're gonna take some notes as I show you the satire thing. You're not gonna need to turn these notes in, but you are gonna need to study them because there'll be a quiz on the terms. So if you go into the overview, so everyone grab your Chromebook, you're gonna click on Satire Terms 2020, and it's got a few blanks. It's got some things filled in because we just won't have time to go over every definition. But the ones that are in this PowerPoint, you can fill in as we go. And then there'll be a quiz on the term by November 22nd. I'll probably put that quiz up next week sometime on Canvas. This is a closed notes, closed neighbor, so on a rhetorical triangle, and some of you used your notes even though I said not to, and then at the end you're like, I did 50% by myself. And I was like, and you get like 50% of the points, right? So you're doing this by yourself, no internet, no help, nada, okay? So you'll want to have these notes so then you can study them and then know them when you take the quiz. Does that make sense? Okay? Okay, so satire. I have for you this meme. It says, I've got a crazy budget idea. What if we fully funded schools and made prisons make up their budget deficit with box tops and money from Target? Okay, why is that funny? Or at least made you chuckle, even if you don't think it's super funny. What is what? Yeah, go for it.
Because prisons are funded better than schools a lot of times.
Yeah.
And schools, in order to get funding, do all these box top stuff.
Yeah, which, did you know that you can't even use box tops at high schools? It's only for elementary schools. 'Cause they're,
That's 75.
yeah, they're like 5 cents, 10 cents, or you get like a 25-cent one, and you're like, what? This is crazy, right? So they're like, yeah, you can make up your deficits this way. But it's a sad commentary on our society when prisons are funded better than schools, right? Although, you wouldn't want prisons to make up their budget from Target and box tops because that could have bad consequences for prisoners getting out and killing everyone. Ah, right? That would be very bad. So it's funny, because they flip those two. Even if you don't really think it's funny, and now I've over-explained it, and it's no longer funny. It was funny at one point. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about satire. So satire isn't just mindless humor, it's humor with a purpose. Okay, so there should be like some blank for satire on your sheet there. So it aims to critique behaviors in society the author wishes to change or draw attention to through humor. So they're like, this thing sucks. I'm going to mock it to draw attention and maybe get people to change, right? Why use satire rather than traditional argumentative genre? Well, number one, it's enjoyable for the audience. They're like, yeah, this is fun. Okay, that's nice. You always want your audience to feel like they like you or like whatever you're presenting. Two, it's a genre that people will actually listen to because it entertains them. So yes, there are those people that will listen to argumentative stuff and they're like, oh yes, I like this. I am intrigued. The general population likes to be entertained. They're like dance monkey dance, right? So you tell them something funny and they're gonna listen to it more. They're gonna engage with it more. And then people are more apt to feel open-minded and willing to change if they're in a good mood rather than being critiqued openly. So even if you're telling them that they suck at something, you do it in a funny way, they might actually listen because they're like, okay, you're right, that is kind of ridiculous that I do that. Imagine like Martin Luther King, instead of saying like, I have a dream, which is not satire, but it makes you feel good, right? Like, I want to engage in your dream and help you accomplish this America that you see. If he had just come out and said, you are all racist because this, you are all racist because that, what does that like do to you as an audience? You feel defensive, right? And if rather than thinking about how you can engage in this dream he has for America, you're thinking, I need to defend myself. He just called me racist and he doesn't know me. Like, okay, maybe I've made a few decisions in my life, but like, whoa, that was way harsh, right? And you're no longer listening to what he has to say. You're trying to defend your own, like, choices and how they, like, you're still a moral person, despite the fact that you've done some things that are not great. So, satire can kind of get around that by, instead of saying like, dude, you all suck. What's this funny thing? You're like, oh, but yeah, right? right? And so you get to engage and decide that like you should change that rather than them saying you suck at this and you need to straighten up, right? Okay, questions about satire so far? Excellent. So let's look at some examples. So I'm gonna play you a video and I want you to tell me what they're satirizing.
Hey, Justin, what's up?
Not much, Jimmy. Hashtag chilling. What's up with you?
Been busy working. Hashtag rise and grind. Hashtag is it Friday yet?
Hey, check it out. I brought you some cookies. Hashtag homemade. Hashtag oatmeal raisin. Hashtag show me the cookie.
Sweet. Hashtag don't mind if I don't. Pretty good. Hashtag getting my cookie on. Hashtag I'm the real cookie monster. Hashtag no.
Delicious, right? Hashtag I did it all for the cookie. Hashtag LOL.
Hashtag classic. By the way, did you catch last week's episode of Duck Dynasty? Hashtag quack quack.
Nah, lately I've mostly been watching Netflix. Hashtag orange is the new black.
Oh, nice. I've been watching a lot of Barney the Dinosaur. Hashtag purple is the new black. Hashtag I love you, you love me, we're a happy family. Hashtag I'm 38. Hashtag dinosaurs. Hashtag letting go extinct. Hashtag meteor. Hashtag ice age. Hashtag speaking of ice age, I just watched Ice Age on demand the other day. Hashtag funny. Hashtag Ray Romano. Hashtag Deborah. Hey, by the way, Halloween's only like a month away.
I know.
I mean, do you know where you're gonna be at? Hashtag life decisions. Hashtag sexy ghost.
I think I'm gonna go as a Ninja Turtle. Hashtag gotta be Raphael. Hashtag Leonardo sucks. Hashtag the turtle, not the Italian Renaissance painter. Hashtag Mona Lisa. Hashtag is she smiling? Hashtag speaking of smiling, I just saw my dentist. Hashtag bling. Hashtag dental care. Hashtag cavity free. Hashtag that's how we do. Hashtag we go hard. Hashtag we can't stop.
We won't stop.
Hashtag we run this.
Hashtag true plans for life.
Hashtag is it worth it? Or let me work. Yeah.
Hashtag put my thing down, flip it, then reverse it.
Hashtag is your equipment never gonna get. Hashtag is your equipment never gonna get.
Hey guys. Yeah, Quest.
What's up?
Hashtag shut the
So, what is being satirized in this movie? What human behavior is being mocked? The overuse of hashtags, right? Now, people don't really talk like this in hashtags, right? But they use it all over social media, and so by hyperbolizing it and bringing it into real life vernacular, which I guess sometimes you still hear people saying hashtag whatever, but it's not quite to this extreme. And so they've exaggerated to point out how ridiculous hashtags actually are sometimes, where you're just like on these tangents in your hashtag. Okay. What about this one? What is being satirized? America wants to stop illegal immigration, so when are you guys leaving? Okay, I hear some chuckles there and like, ooh, Larry, what's being satirized here?
That they are actually the ones that are there first.
Yeah, right, they've got this Native American man here. He lived in America far before Europeans got there, right? And we have like all of these laws about immigration and particularly in the media these days, people have been pretty harsh towards illegal immigrants, right? So he's like, okay, yeah, I like that, I dig that, when are you leaving? Because we, like as Americans, as Europeans came here, and I mean, you can't really like judge today's world off of like old standards, like they don't mesh because it was just different, but still something to point out when you're being all harsh, like ooh, ugh, kind of makes you think about that behavior and judgment of immigrants, right? Okay, have you seen those posters that are like super motivating and they'll put like teamwork, everyone is better off when we all work, blah blah blah. Okay, this is called, there's like this demotivation.com, and they have all these demotivation posters. So the journey of 1,000 miles sometimes ends very, very badly. Ambition, and then this poor salmon being eaten by a bear. So kind of mocking those posters in general. It creates a parody of them. Today's random medical news. You've got 3 wheels, so some sort of noun can cause some sort of bad, I don't know, disease in another like person or animal or thing. So according to a report released today, so what is this satirizing or making fun of? The news? And specifically how like it seems like every day something's gonna kill you, right? Like, oh no, you eat food, you will die. And it's like, well, probably. Okay, so it's like they're just spinning and making up crap for the new day. That's how it feels sometimes. I'm like, okay, I think I'll choose death. I like candy. Okay, we've got these parents standing on the side, watching their child watch TV, and it says, thank goodness he's watching TV instead of getting sucked into all that Harry Potter media hype. And what is he watching on TV?
It looks like a gunfight is going on.
Yeah, I mean, look at that violence there. Criminals shooting each other. Okay, why is this satire? What is it mocking? You can do this. My AP kiddos, I believe in you. Or at least what's ironic about this? What do you think, Nathan?
I think they're mocking like parents who let their kids watch TV like all day long.
Okay, and yet are mad about, like, don't let them read things like Harry Potter. They're like, oh, I'm being such a good parent by not letting them read Harry Potter, because that is very bad. It's about witches, don't you know, right? And yet they let their kids watch violent crap on TV, right? So they're like, oh yeah, I'm so glad that we're doing so good, but they're not paying attention to the other crap. And I think that even today you could apply that to social media, like, oh yeah, I'm so glad we don't let our children watch terrible things on TV or read terrible books in school, and yet like on social media you're saying crazy crap, right? It's bad. Okay. Satire obviously is a part of reading like text too. So this is called The Idiot's Guide to Art. Says whenever I write about art, I get mail from the serious art community informing me that I am a clueless idiot. So let me begin by stipulating that I am a clueless idiot. I saw Art Basel, a big art show held recently on Miami Beach. It attracted thousands of serious art people who wear mostly black outfits and can maintain serious expressions no matter what work of art they are viewing. This is hard because a lot of serious art consists of bizarre or startlingly unattractive objects or performances wherein artists do something conceptual such as squirt cheese whiz into an orifice that has not been approved by Food and Drug Administration for snack toppings. But no matter what the art is, a serious art person will view it with the somber expression of a radiologist examining x-rays of a tumor. Whereas an amateur will eventually give himself away by laughing or saying, huh? Or this is the most embarrassing, asking an art gallery person, is this a wastebasket? Or is this wastebasket a piece of art? Or can I put my gum wrapper in it? I managed not to say anything stupid until I encountered a slide projector sitting on the floor, projecting a rectangle of white light with twitching lens dust onto the wall. I asked the gallery person, is there supposed to be a slide in this projector? He patiently explained that no, this was a work of art entitled Autofocus Slide Projector Dust. In another container, there was a work of art consisting of a video repeated over and over showing a man, not in peak physical condition I might add, rollerblading around a vast empty space, stark naked. I'm proud to say I portrayed no emotion while viewing this work, although my daughter, who was 3, said quite loudly, you can see it's tushy. Yuck. She is young and has no art training. Okay, what is being satirized here?
Modern art.
Modern art. Have you guys ever been to a modern art museum? Now, there's some very cool stuff in modern art museums, right? There's also some stuff that I'm like, why is this in here? For instance, my aunt went to the Museum of Modern Art in New York, and her friends are coming to this exhibit. There's this pedestal, and on top is a Kikkoman soy sauce bottle, and that is it. And it is considered art, and she's like, what the heck? Like, do you think that that artist just got up one day and was like, oh shoot, I was supposed to submit something like art, right? So it doesn't make sense to a lot of this, right? And now they go around grocery stores taking pictures of priceless artifacts, Kikkoman soy bottles on the shelves. They're mocking the fact that like there seems to be some sort of weirdness around people who say they understand modern art, and then the people who are like, what the heck is actually going on here, right? So mocking that, which is funny. That was funny. In case you didn't laugh, it was funny. Okay, irony. So thinking about satire, irony is a huge component in satire. Because basically what satire does is it presents one thing but means another. So write this down. Irony is a contradiction, and maybe, I think you have 3 definitions actually, so you might wait, because we'll go over the 3 specific ones. But the contradiction between expectation and reality, okay? And so looking at, like, if it were on a scale, right, it starts nice, irony, and then it can go over to the harsh and bitter. So here you, like, at the most kind level of irony, you've got a pun. So a pun is like all your Laffy Taffy jokes. It's the wordplay, like your grandpa dad jokes, right? Basically, it's when a word has 2 meanings, right, and they're using one instead of the other. So any of the jokes of the day that they tell, those are always puns. I can't think of any off the top of my head. Anyone has a good joke example they can say, but yeah, my grandpa thinks that these are the funniest jokes in the world. So, anyway, so puns. There is an irony there because they say like one word that means 2 things, and so they're playing off of that double meaning to create the humor. Parody is a little bit, I guess, sometimes it can be just as nice as fun, but it's on this nice side, right? So parody is when you take like a real work and then you create a mock image of that, and you like imitate it for humor. So anything on like Saturday, well, not anything on Saturday Night Live, but a lot of things on Saturday Night Live are parodies. So a few weeks ago they did a parody of the debate between Trump and Biden, where they like set it up and they looked like them, but then said, well, only slightly more ridiculous things than were actually said, right? That was kind of a garbage dumpster of debate. Anyway, yeah, so they do a lot of things like that. There's parodies in a lot of things, a lot of funny things today are parodies, okay? Horatian satire then is basically like nice satire. So it's indulgent and witty and it's kind of poking fun, but it's not really bitter. Yeah?
Who is this named after?
I believe they're the Greek people, so there's Horatio, and it was something, Horatio is a Greek dude, and then Juvenalian, I can't remember his name, but it's also, these are like Greek guys who kind of first started using these terrible satire names. So, I remember the difference because Horatio sounds like a fat, jolly guy, and he might make some jokes, but not really all that mean. We're like Juvenalian. I mean, that sounds like it might be nicer because you think juvenile. Maybe think like juvenile prison or something, and that will make you see it meaner. I don't know. Or just remember it's the opposite, okay? So Juvenalian is bitter, harsh satire, where you're pretty angry about what you're talking about, and you're sort of poking fun, but it makes you go like, ugh, like, yikes. And you can create bitter satire using a sardonic voice, which is cynical. It makes it seem like it can't really be helped, but like you're just like mad about it, but you're not really offering solutions, okay? Sarcasm, a lot of people get sarcasm just mixed up with verbal irony, where you think it's just like kind of funny, but sarcasm is actually intended to be mean and hurtful. So like the true definition of sarcasm is derision intended to hurt, right? So don't think of it as like the friendly sarcasm we think of when you're looking at satire. It's a more bitter thing. And then invective or epithet. This is name calling. So you're using really harsh words and mean things. Anyway, so there's a scale there that you should be aware of. Any questions on those? Okay, my little mask thing is. I feel like these masks are smaller than my last mask. It's gonna hurt my ears. Not that that's relevant. Okay. So just a better definition. Juvenalian is a harsh, bitter, formal satire in which the speaker's voice attacks vice and errors with contempt and indignation. A modest proposal is more along the lines of a Juvenalian satire, because he's very bitter, and we'll talk about that. And it strongly contrasts Horatian. So Horatian then, again, is an indulgent, tolerant, amused, and witty voice. The speaker holds up gentle ridicule of the absurdities and follies of human beings, aiming at producing in the reader not the anger of a Juvenalian satirist, but a wry smile. So you're like, like the hashtag would definitely be more Horatian, right? An example of that, Jane Austen uses some of this throughout her works. In Pride and Prejudice, she says, "It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife.
How does that satire?
Well, how do you guys think of satire?
It
You know-
seems to be true to me.
Okay, just because you're wealthy doesn't mean you necessarily want to marry anyone, right? Like think about today, you got those bachelor guys who are like, yeah, but they're saying, basically during that time you find like a wealthy man, all of a sudden like people are like thrusting their daughters at him, like he must want a wife, so let's, so they're just kind of mocking the fact that like people try to court the wealthy people, like, and kind of just, it's not meant to be harsh, right? It's meant to be kind of wry, like, that is true, but like, that does seem kind of dumb that like, we're like, oh, he's wealthy, quick, go be his friend, make him love you, be his wife, right? And you get that a lot in her novels, right, where there's like some wealthy bachelor, but she really just wants the broody guy over here. That's just how Jane Austen works. Okay, indirect satire is satire in which an author exposes characters' shortcomings through their words and actions instead of directly saying whatever it is. So I think that that's on your page 2. So Saturday Night Live uses a lot of indirect satire. Students today demand wars and easier to find countries was like another piece of satire. Usually I would have you guys go over it, but we don't have a lot of time this year. But it basically is just this like, they're like, we need Afghanistan? Where is that? Or all these crazy whatever names, and they're like, we need easier to find countries on our test because this is ridiculous. And it just kind of satirical. Advice to youth is something that Mark Twain writes, and he writes this advice to you that's just kind of bogus. He'll be like, always get up with the early bird, unless of course you are tired from the night before. So he'll just kind of, anyway, it's kind of funny. We would normally read it. Often political cartoons use that indirect because they're not saying exactly, but they're using pictures to show that. So you've got the Prez dispenser there where he's saying top secret, censored, and he's just blurting it out, blur, 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 right? So they're kind of mocking him in the fact that he can't keep his mouth shut. But they don't say that, right? They just show it in this picture. Or Biden 2020, your hands-on president. He's sniffing a teddy bear, which is terrible and funny because there's lots of pictures of him like behind young girls looking at like sniffing their hair. So they're kind of pointing out this creeper factor, but also like in a hands-off way, in an indirect way, right? They don't say, he's a creeper. They say, hands-on president, like, isn't that funny? Yeah. Okay, direct satire then is the opposite. It's where the subject being satirized is directly addressed. They tell you what's being satirized. So this is from a piece called The Death of Common Sense. It says, you can't get into your car and not run into another idiot who pulls into the gas station with his fuel tank on the wrong side and then has to get instructions from a NASA team at Houston Control to find out how to maneuver his car so that the tank is on the correct side. And you can't open a paper without reading about a Mondo idiot who gets hurt or killed at a railroad crossing because they had to try and beat the train to get home in time to watch Charlene Tilton's Salute to Porcelain Clowns on QVC. So they're directly addressing that people are bad drivers or just kind of idiots in the way that they drive. But it's still satire, even though they tell you what they're satirizing because they've completely hyperbolized this, right? They've exaggerated it. People don't actually get instructions from NASA to turn their car around, but it can take them a long time. And people don't usually actually rush home to see QVC Porcelain Clowns because that's pretty good. Okay. Some other tools for creating satire. So hyperbole, not hyperbole. Hyperbole is exaggeration. And these are all Greek words too. A lot of our satire comes from Greek, like they identified it first. So you overstate the seriousness of the behavior or the circumstance being described. So when people are like, I literally died, you did not literally die because you're still talking, okay? But they're being hyperbolic about whatever the situation is. Lenities or understatement is the opposite. So instead of exaggerating, you're describing extreme or shocking things in small, insignificant, understated terms. So let's say a shark bites off your arm, and you're like, oh, it's fine, it's just a flesh wound. Like, you're definitely understating the extremity, right? So that can be funny too. Irony, there are 3 types, okay? We usually think of verbal or situational irony. Dramatic is a little different. So verbal irony is when something is said and the opposite is meant, right? So they'll do through puns, or they'll say one thing and mean another. Situational irony is when what happens is the opposite of what is expected. So maybe you're in a horror film and they're like going to this door and you're expecting something creepy, and your mom comes out and you're like, that's situational learning, because it's not as scary as you thought it was going to be. And then dramatic irony is a little different. It's when the reader knows something that the character does not. So think of like Romeo and Juliet. I showed the one to my classes that was like, of the many, but one of them was the modern version with Leonardo DiCaprio and Claire Danes. And we know that Juliet is alive, right? And he's like saying goodbye to her, and then he's looking up and her eyes open, and we're all like, ah, don't, and he drinks the poison just as she brushes his cheek. Okay, that's dramatic irony, because we knew she was alive, but Romeo does not, and then it's tragic. Dramatic irony, okay? And then persona is also something that's useful when creating satire. It's a role or a facade adopted by an author to satisfy the demands of a satirical situation. So it allows satirists to be extreme or ironic in ways that powerfully confront society when they're in fact not that way. So thinking about when we read Huck Finn, he adopts a persona. He kind of just seems like he's like lollygagging through the whole thing, but that allows us to see these critiques that Mark Twain is making in this book by having Huck adopt that particular persona. Stephen Colbert kind of adopts a persona where he seems a little bit more aloof than he actually is. He's actually a very smart guy, right? But sometimes he plays down to create these jokes. I adopt a persona as your teacher. I get much more excited about things than I probably would in a normal conversation with other humans because I'm not trying to get them to care, right? Maybe you adopt personas in different situations with your parents. Maybe you play a little bit younger. You actually are, so you can get what you want. But then with your friends, you're actually quite savvy. Yay, personas. Okay, any questions about this satirical terminology? Excellent. Okay, we're going to talk about Lamott's proposal, so pull that up, even if you're not finished with it. This is a really interesting, I think, well put together piece of satire. So, we'll read the context first, and then we'll start answering. You should have answered 6 questions at the end, so we're going to talk more holistically about this. If you haven't done it yet, you need to go back and read it and annotate. The things you're annotating for were diction, tone, the rhetorical triangles, appeals, imagery, and then any other rhetorical choices that help you understand the purpose better, okay? So the context says, born in 1667 in Ireland and raised there by English parents, Jonathan Swift was Dean of St. Patrick's Cathedral in Dublin and a prolific poet, satirist, and pamphleteer. While he is best known today for his satirical novel, Gulliver's Travels, and for A Modest Proposal, his political pamphlets and essays on behalf of the Irish causes had great impact and are themselves masterpieces of political irony. Swift's work is thought by some to reveal a misanthropic, skeptical, and hopeless heart, but there always exists in his writing the possibility of alternatives, the hope for improvement. In A Modest Proposal, Swift writes, "Therefore I repeat, let no man talk to me of these and the like expedients till he has at least some glimpse of hope that there will ever be some hearty and sincere attempt to put them in practice. As you read this essay and try to tease out Swift's message, keep this idea in mind. In 1729, when A Modest Proposal was published, years of drought were exacerbated by crop failure and caused thousands of Irish to starve to death. And this suffering was essentially ignored by the English landowners. A Modest Proposal is Swift's response to this tragedy." Okay, so who can give us a brief summary of what his modest proposal is? What does he propose to us? Go for it.
Proposes eating babies that are unwanted.
Yeah, and why does he propose that? Why does that solve their problem?
Because then they don't have to take care of these babies.
Yeah, and they actually feed people with these babies, so it's better than just letting them die. Okay, so let's dig into this a little bit. He proposes, he's like, I know that we're poor, I know that we have too many mouths to feed, and remember that the Irish and Ireland is predominantly Catholic, and Catholics do not believe in using birth control, nor do I know that it was widely available at this time, right? They didn't have a ton of contraceptive, but if they did, it wouldn't be allowed anyway, because Catholicism says no birth control. So they have lots of children. right? You hear that term Irish twins. What, does anyone know what that means?
Yeah, two people born in the same year.
Two people in the same family, born in the same year, but they're not actually twins, right? They're just, you can have a baby every 9 months, so within that same calendar year. Most people try to avoid that because that sounds heinous, right? However, that's where you get that term from. So lots and lots of babies. Then they have this famine, that their potato crop doesn't work very well, and so they're all starving. So they're like, okay. He's like, I have a solution. People are starving. People have too many kids. Let's eat the kids. Wouldn't that be excellent, right? And so he talks about that. He even goes on to say that, like, okay, what if, just like veal is like young deer, right? We could eat the older children as like veal, right? If they did something wrong, instead of just hanging them and wasting that, it could be a delicacy. Wouldn't that work great? We get rid of criminals and feed people. So he proposes this. Okay. Let's dig into how this is satirical and how he doesn't actually want to eat babies, okay? Because when I do this with my regular 11, when I teach regular 11, they're always like, this guy's a psychopath. Did they know that? He wants to eat babies. And you're like, he doesn't actually want to eat babies. It's satire. And they're like, but it's not funny. And you're like, okay, but, okay. Yes.
I think even if it is satire, he's still a psychopath, because a normal person wouldn't even write something about eating babies, I feel like.
But he's trying to get you to feel ooky, so that you will be like, this is a problem. They are being rude to us. We need to do, like, these people need to step up and do something. So, like, yes, he's saying what no one should say, but he's doing it for a purpose. So you can maybe argue that he's still crazy for even proposing it, but he does get that ook factor across and hopefully get us to think about how to change this. So, Swift wants the reader to view him in a specific way. What features best describe the persona he adopts? So how does he sound in this piece? What does he make himself out to be? Yeah.
He uses the word humble multiple times.
Yes.
Like he's trying to be humble in his proposal.
Absolutely, and it's a modest proposal, so it's not that crazy, he says. Tries to create this ethos of credibility. What else does he do? I think he tries to sound pretty reasonable, right? So he's like, along with being humble, he's like, he lists a lot of facts. He's pretty well researched. He wants, and when he's talking about terrible things, he says them in a way that you are like, are you serious right now? So like, he's talking about children on the second page, about here. Okay, so he says, it is exactly 1 year that I propose to provide for them in such a manner, yes, as to be instead of being a charge upon their parents or the parish for wanting food or raiment for the rest of their lives, they shall, on the contrary, contribute to the feeding and partly to the clothing of many thousands. So he goes like on about how like, look, this is pretty reasonable, and then he starts talking about how you can like season the dish, right? Like, look, we can make them delicious, right? They'll make 2 dishes for entertainment for friends, or if you dine alone, you could just get the hind quarter and season it with a little pepper or salt, boil it, delicious, right? Like, he just kind of seems like he's on this cooking show. Like, look, you can, a little dash of salt, a little sprig or whatever, and babies are great, right? And so he goes on and on, kind of making it sound like that's reasonable, and he has facts for why it is that way, but also very humble, right? Anything else you want to say about his persona? Yeah.
He talks in a very objective way.
Okay.
It's not personal or anything like that.
Yeah, right? And he even like compares them to livestock at one point. So he says at the bottom of page 2 into page 1, he says, I do therefore humbly offer it to public consideration that of the 120,000 children already computed, so like already born, 20,000 may be reserved for breed, whereof only 1/4 part to be males, which is more than we allow for sheep, black cattle, or swine. And my reason is that these children are seldom the fruits of marriage, a circumstance not too regarded by our savages. Therefore, 1 male will be sufficient to serve 4 females. So he's like, He's crazy. Okay, but he just makes it sound like, oh, this isn't a big deal, like, reasonable. I'm not being crazy, right? And it's pretty simple. So he presents these facts, and he's like, look, like, these people usually don't even get married anyway, so it's not like we're making them do something terrible, right? We're just, we're being even more magnanimous than we are to animals in this comparison. So yes. Anything else you want to say as persona? Okay. So he explains for a long time the anticipated results before revealing an actual proposal. So let's talk about that rhetorical strategy. Why does he wait so long? Because like the first page, he's just like, this is going to be great. The second page, this is going to be excellent. My scheme is awesome. And then finally, he says, let's eat babies. So why wait that long to say, let's eat babies? What do you guys think? If you hadn't read it, you can probably think about why he would do this. So why would he wait to say, my proposal is, let's eat babies? Beckett?
Maybe you should like set it up front. They wouldn't really read the book, so it's kind of creepy. But
Yeah. But if he waits and he explains all the problems it's going to fix, you're like, oh, I'm interested in reading what this proposal is. He creates that anticipation before he drops eat babies. And you're like, whoa, okay, that escalated quickly. Like, what just happened there, right? You wouldn't read his little pamphlet if you knew it was like, my proposal is to eat babies. You'd be like, next. But then you're like, oh, this solves so many problems. And then you're like, oh, that got dark. But maybe you're invested enough to keep reading on why he says that. Anything else you want to say about that one? Okay, so thinking about ethos, pathos, and logos, which do you think that the speaker uses primarily, and why? Logos, okay, why?
Because he uses a lot of data and logic.
Yeah, tons of data. He even talks about other people who have tried this. He says the Americans are doing it, which is kind of funny because this is before the Revolutionary War, right? And so they think of the Americans as criminals and barbarians and people who don't really, who suck, they've been thrust out of their country, right? And so they're like, I have an incredible account, and they're kind of mocking, look, the Americans eat babies and they're fine. That's kind of funny. He's like, they're eating Americans. But definitely a lot of logos. And yet he's using that logos to explain the eating of children, which should appeal to your emotions as well, right? So he's kind of double playing there, where he's saying things very logically, like, look, you can chop up these babies, and maybe they could have 2 meals on that baby, or if you're feeling like you wanted a feast, you could bring a whole baby, right? And that is, you should be going gross, and oh, I feel so sad, because anytime you talk about tiny humans, that is invoking your emotions. Okay, if you don't care about tiny humans, you may need to get your emotions checked because they're very cute and we should want to protect them as a biological need, right? And so he is using that logo to talk about something that's pretty emotional, tiny humans being butchered for food, which I think is an interesting choice. Anything else you want to say about the rhetorical appeals? Okay. So I tried to highlight this for you, but I guess the highlights didn't stay. But looking at paragraph 12, which is on the 3rd page, page 3, it says, I grant this food will be somewhat dear, and therefore very proper for landlords who, as they have already devoured most of the parents, seem to have the best title to the children. Yeah, so he uses words like dear and devoured. Explain the rhetorical strategy there. What is he doing? What's he using? Okay, so he's using dear to talk about children, which, is probably fitting. And then he puts this image of people devouring other people. When you put two things that don't go together next to each other, what is that? Juxtaposition, right? So he's juxtaposing the image of these tiny children. And then who is devouring who?
The landlords.
The landlords are devouring
People.
the people, right? And are they literally devouring them?
No.
No, how are they devouring them?
Taking rent.
They're taking rent on these poor people, right? So they're they've already and they're probably gouging them. I don't know for sure. I should probably look a little bit more into the historical context, but at least it's not something that they can pay with the current famine, whether or not they could pay that in a normal year, right? So they're like, you've already devoured the parents, you might as well eat these dear children, right? And he's juxtaposing these images. Here's kind of where we see that he doesn't actually mean eat the children, because he's pretty bitter here in how he's treating the landlords. He's mad that, you know, his people are suffering, that they're starving, that they're dying in poverty, and they're destitute. And so you see that kind of show through here, where even though, yes, he's talking about, I have reckoned upon medium that children just born weigh 12 pounds in a solar year, if tolerably nursed, increased to 28. So he's like, yes, he's still playing with this persona, but then it kind of leaks out there his hatred towards the English people who are inflicting so much pain on his Irish neighbors. Okay, and then I think question 5 kind of goes along with that, where you see the anger leak through. It says paragraphs 31 and 32, so down here at the end. Glad you can't see this, let's make it bigger. Full screen. Okay, so in these paragraphs, again, you see a break from his ironic voice. So his ironic voice is that persona that he creates, where he's saying one thing but means he's actually pissed off about it. He's not actually proposing that we eat children, right? And we want to look at why that's the case in these paragraphs, and then think about other places, just like the one we just read, where his voice breaks through, and we see that he doesn't actually propose this, and he's actually quite mad. So in the first paragraph it says, but as to myself, having been wearied out for many years with offering vain, idle, visionary thoughts, and at length utterly despairing of success, I fortunately fell upon this proposal, which as it is wholly new, so it has something solid and real, of no expense and little trouble, full in our own power, and whereby we can incur no danger in disobliging England. For this kind of commodity will bear no exportation, and flesh being of too tender a consistence to admit a long continuance in salt, although perhaps I could name a country which would be glad to eat up our whole nation without it. Okay, so he starts out in his persona, and then where does his anger break through? Okay, he's definitely not in English. Where do we see that?
He said that they would be glad to eat up their whole nation.
Yeah, right here he's like, although I can think of a country which shall remain, like, he doesn't say a name, right, but we know he means English, which would be glad to eat up our whole nation without it, right? So they'd be happy if we all just like died and they could consume all of us. So you can see some of that bitterness leaking through there. And then he gets really angry in this next paragraph. He's like, after all, I am not so violently bent on my own opinion as to reject any offer proposed by wise men, which shall be found equally innocent, cheap, easy, and effectual. But before something of that kind shall be advanced in contradiction to my scheme in offering a better, I desire the author or authors will be pleased maturely to consider 2 points. First, as things now stand, how they will be able to find food and raiment for 100,000 useless mouths and backs. And secondly, there is around 1 million creatures in humane figure throughout this kingdom whose whole subsistence put into a common stock would leave them in debt 2 million of pounds sterling, adding those who are beggars by profession to the bulk of farmers, cottagers, and laborers, and the wives and children who are beggars in effect. I desire those politicians who dislike my overture and may perhaps be so bold to attempt an answer that they will first ask the parents of these mortals whether they would not at this day think it a great happiness to have been sold for food at a year old, in the manner I prescribed, and thereby have avoided such a perpetual scene of misfortunes as they have since gone through, by the oppression of landlords, the impossibility of paying rent without money or trade, the want of common sustenance, with neither house nor clothes to cover them from the incleminities of the weather, and the most inevitable prospect entailing the like or greater miseries upon their breed forever. So he, is pretty angry here, right? He's like, before you knock what I'm saying, consider all of the terrible things that are actually happening in this country and what he's mad about. He's like, so like some people would be bold enough to be like, you're a psycho, right? Like they would say that to him, and he's like, before you call me a psycho, consider how bad our situation really is. And he really breaks through there. And he's no longer the fun, add a dash of salt and it'll be delicious persona. He's pretty pissed off, right? So he does that in a few other places. Did anyone want to talk about places they found? Figured. Okay. And then thinking about just holistically, do you think that this is an effective piece of satire, and why? And what's your reaction? You don't think so?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay, why not?
The proposal is just too horrifying for me to listen to really anything he says.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're too horrified, and if you were the English, you would not change your behavior based on his proposal to eat babies.
Yeah.
Yeah, because who's his audience? His audience is probably the English and probably his own people, the Irish, right? He's probably passing this out there. Okay, anyone else feel differently? Yeah.
I think it would be effective because, like, no one wants to, like, see people eat babies. So the English wouldn't want the Irish to eat babies. So they would probably, like, send food.
Okay, maybe, like, or at least it'll get them to think, like, wow, these people are psycho, and maybe they'll internalize that they've, you know, done something wrong. Although, probably the English don't care, because they're like, your problem, not mine, right? But maybe it causes other people to think about this that aren't thinking about why they're in poverty and stuff, and place the blame in the correct place. Anyone else? I mean, he could have just written it like a rhetorical piece where he's like, not a rhetorical piece, like an argument where he's like, the English have done this, this, and this, kind of like we see in the Declaration of Independence where they're listing all the wrongs that England has committed against them. And you might get some people who listen to that. But if you hear that there's a pamphlet out where someone's talking about eating babies, you might pick that up. You might be shocked, be like, what? And you pick it up and you're like, this is crazy, right? At least his message is getting around. So maybe in that way it's effective. However, I think like Joseph said, there is the risk when you're this bitter of totally like alienating a lot of people who would listen to you. So I think he kind of, you know, I think it's a really cool rhetorical piece. I don't know if I were in that time, if I would listen to him or I'd be like, he's crazy, right? It's kind of a fine line. I think it could go either way. Okay, any questions about this piece? Okay, if you haven't done it, do it. You guys need to be more on top of your stuff this term. And then this, again, is the last week where you'll have a video tomorrow. And then after that, I will hopefully see you twice a week on Mondays and Wednesdays, right? Yeah? Okay, and now we have to take a really important, I'm sure, survey about something. So, we'll start that. They sent it to me in an email and I was like, okay, I'll look at it on Monday. So, they'll probably announce and interrupt us. But we'll start with the, let's see here, video training first. Not that. I think it's in a different email. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so this is a video made a few years ago. Safety. How long is it? I don't know. But it's, I think we have to do one a month. I think it was the shooting one, like a shooter.
This video has been prepared as a training tool for students, teachers, and parents. What you are about to see is fictitious